Notion can be a really powerful tool to stay on top of your finances, both in your personal and your professional life. But there's usually one big hurdle: getting the data into Notion. I mean, who really has the time to sit down and input all of their expenses into Notion? Luckily, you can easily automate the whole process. So in this video, I'll show you how to build a fully automated finance tracker in Notion. Here's a little preview. It's a simple but really effective overview that will show you your most recent expenses, your current financial status for the month, right? So how much you spent and how much you made, and then some nice insights into, okay, how much do you spend over certain categories, or how is your month-by-month breakdown in terms of finances looking like. And again, everything fully automated. You won't have to, do a single data input in order for this to populate in your Notion workspace. In order to build this yourself, we first need to set up your databases. For this setup, you want to have 3 databases. One for your cash flow items, a second one for the individual months, and then third one for the years. And it will become very clear why we need the later two in a second. So let's type /database and create first our cash flow items. And here, the properties that we need for sure are, of course, the amount. So we need a number property called amount. And we can just call this, change it to a US dollar or whatever currency you use. Then we want another property for the date, right, when that transaction happened. And then last but not least, we need a select property in order to determine whether this is an inflow or an outflow. So let's just call this type, and then as options add inflow and outflow. And the reason we want to have this here in one database and not in several databases is because if you plan on using the new Notion charts, it's much better to have all the information in one and the same database. It makes it much easier to visualize than, the rate, for example, of inflow versus outflow. And that's pretty much the reason for that. If not, you could, of course, also split this in 2 databases. But overall, this is just a nice and scalable setup. Now, you can add to this, of course, more complexity. For example, we could add now another select property and call this category. So if we want to break down our spending into different types of spends, we could do that. So let's call this, for example, groceries and travel and dining out, right? In case this is a private finance tracker. In case, of course, it's a business finance tracker, you might want to add categories for your different departments in the team. Next up, let's add our next database. And this will be the database for the months. So create this here. And this one is much, much simpler. We can just, for now at least, we can delete the existing property. And then we just need a relation of the month to our different cash flow items. And we're going to show it on both sides. And we can just call this, items here, and then month on the other side. And that will allow us to group our elements by a different month. So we can just quickly go in here and actually swap out an icon or a calendar icon. And here, the item one, we can swap that for, let's just take the list and can have different line items. And now, all right, let's say, okay, we have here September, October, and November. And that means now, let's say we have, just to give an example, right? Let's say we have here shopping at Costco, we have coffee, and we have ice cream and some random ones. So let's say $55, $5, and $30 for ice cream. Was a lot of ice cream. What we can do now is we can set the month, and later this will all happen automatically, right? It's just now to show you the reason why we set up databases that way. And we can set a category, so let's say groceries here, and then both coffee and ice cream that was both during a travel. And what we can now do is create some aggregation here on this to see at a glance how much we spend across the board. So first, let's stop wrapping this, and then let's create a new formula property here. This formula property, first what we want is, of course, our total spend. So let's call this total spend and spent. And then we can use an arrow, right, to indicate, okay, this is the money that goes out. And in terms of formula, what we want to do is we want to say, okay, give me the items, then filter them. We want to filter them where the current and then the category, the type, is equal to an outflow, right? Because if we have later inflows and outflows in there, we only want to catch the ones that are outflows. And then after that, we need to map and get the current amount. And then last but not least, we need to sum this. Now, if this is a bit complicated, don't worry, you can always pause the video, just type it down, or you can check out the blog posting in the description where you have all these formulas to copy paste. So let's click done. Now this should show nothing because currently we haven't set our types here. So let's just set outflow on all of these. And now we have our sum of 90. Just need to adapt it and make also sure that here our number format is also US dollar. And we see, okay, across the board, we spend currently $90 in September. And now, since we can then, for the next month, right, map a different month, we'll have then this overview of how much we spend each month overall. And we can also create category breakdowns. In order to do that, let's just duplicate this for our general setup. And let's call this, travel as one example. There we have several expenses. Let's take the plane as an icon. And now what we want to do is before we, sum everything up, we want to, filter a second time. So there are two ways to do it. We can just tap on another filter, or we can modify this filter with AND. So let's actually do that. So we'll put, AND in the brackets. And that means we can add a second condition. And we'll say, so for one, it should be outflow. And then for two, the current dot, category should be equal to travel. And now, if we click on done, this should reduce accordingly to 35. Yes, 5 plus 30, perfect. And now what you could do is, of course, just duplicate this property for whatever category you have. And all you need to do in the formula is swap out where it says travel, right, for whatever other categories you have. Nearly done. One last database, but this one is super simple. Here, let's create now our database for the year, just because we probably want to see our spend, year over year. And in this one, all we need is the name. And then we need a relation to our different months. So again, show months, show the year. And in this case, month gets again, our calendar. We can now map these to that. So let's say, okay, we currently have 2024, and then we need 2025 as well. Not need to go further for now. And then we map this here to 2024. And now we can do the same thing here on the year that we did on the month, right? We can create an aggregation. So we can again say, okay, give me a formula property, total spend. And here again, write a very similar formula, right? So we take our months, then we want to filter our months, and we want to make sure the, actually, we don't need to do the filter. We can just realize because we take just the whole spend. So what we can just simply do is say, okay, from months, please map the current dot total spend, and then just give me the sum of that. All right, click on OK. And of course, in this case, it's still 19, right? Because we don't have any spend for any other months. But if we had any other months, we would now get the aggregated spend across everything. We could then break it further down, right, again into like the different categories if we want to. But I think this is a good starting point for the database backend for our fully automated finance tracker in Notion. One quick note, you can download the whole setup as the finished template, plus a bunch of additional Notion templates, all on my website. Link for that is in the description. On there, you'll find also a ton of tutorials to learn more about Notion and to really push the limits. So definitely go check that one out. Next up, a quick step with Google Drive. In Google Drive, we basically want a location where we can have two folders. One folder for all our income and one folder for all of our expenses. Now, if you use this for a private use case and you work a regular job where you simply get a payslip and it's the same amount every month, then you can skip the part with income. In that case, I'll show you in a second where you can just like set up a recurring income in Notion. But if your income fluctuates, maybe because you are a business or you track your business income in here and you write invoices and you need to have them tracked, or you're a freelancer, so you have a varying income for that, you can also use this to automatically extract the inflows. So in that case, we want to have two folders, right? One for inflows and another one for our outflows. And that's pretty much everything we need to set up here. Just quickly, as promised, how would you set up, your recurring inflow all the time? Well, the easiest way to do that is to set up a new template here on your database and say, payslip or whatever, source of income you have. Say, okay, let's say we earn $5,000 a month. The type, very important, would be inflow, and the date, we can say, okay, please do the today date when duplicated. And then what we can do is we can say, okay, let's make this template, this payslip recurring. So let's say make this repeat, and let's repeat this, monthly or weekly, depending on when you get paid. Say so every month we want to create this, and then we can save it. And that means now every month we will get a new entry of our payslip here. And then once it is in there, just show you as an example. So payslip, we can just apply this template. we'll see we have now a new inflow that has automatically this date associated with it. It doesn't have the month, right? That we either need to do manually, or we can build a separate automation for that. But other than that, it's already in there, and then we can of course expand our calculations here and say, okay, let's duplicate our total spend, and let's call this our total income. Again, if your income is fixed and you don't care about this, you can skip that. If your income is variable and you care about, okay, how much did you make every month, you probably want to have this. And the only thing we need to swap out here is outflow to inflow, and that will give us our total income. And then we could of course have also our another formula property for our result, particularly relevant if this is for a business use case, where we say, okay, total income minus total spent, and then also have this show as dollar. So we have a live updating overview over the month of how we're standing. With this ready, we can move on to the automation that will automatically extract all our income and expenses and add it to Notion. The automation tool that we're going to use today is called Relay.app. And they're one of my favorite new and very recent finds in the whole automation world. They are great because they have a very, very easy to use interface. They have a very strong integration with AI in a very useful way. And it's overall a lower learning curve with Relay.app compared to Make.com. Make.com is the usual automation tool that I use for most of my client workflows. But in particular, if you're newer to automations, this is much easier. So that's why I'm going to show it to you with Relay. But of course, you could just as well use Make.com to build this. All right, so this is how it looks like when you sign up for Relay.app. And one thing I forgot, they also have an amazing free plan. Another reason to do a tutorial with them, because you can build all of this for yourself for free. Anyway, this is how it looks like when you sign first up, although you probably won't see any workflows because your workspace will be empty. But what you want to do is you want to click on New Workflow. And then the first thing we can do is we can title this. So let's call this Automated Finance Tracker Outflows, right? And then if you wanted to have an icon for it, right, the money that you spend, you can add that to it. Next, we need to define the trigger. And the trigger basically means when should this automation start? Now, what we want to have is that we want, whenever we add another expense to our expense folder in Google Drive, we want this automation to extract that information and add it to Notion. So what we're going to do is we say, okay, please, Google Drive, whenever there is a file added to a folder. Now, if you have not used Google Drive with Relay.app before, it will walk you through the flow to authorize it. And once you've done, you can now here select the folder. So my folder will be the expense folder, if I recall it correctly, or outflows. And then you should add ideally an expense to it or a PDF. So we have some assignment data. I did that, right? I had my whimsical invoice for August and September. We can preview it here and just pulls that data in. So with that done, we can click on done. And that is now the first step of our automation. All right. We're going to use AI to extract the information from the document. And it could be a PDF, it could be an image, right? Whatever you get to document your spend, you can put it there. Now, the method that I'm going to show you first works best for individual invoices. So probably better in a business use case where you have, individual invoices for all your expenses. For more of a private use case where you might have, a bank statement or a credit card statement, we need to slightly expand this automation. I'm going to show you how that works in a second, but let's first focus on this much simpler use case where you have one invoice for one expense. In that case, what we want to do is we want to click on Add a Step, and we want to say, please give me the AI. And I want to write a custom prompt. Now, my custom prompt will be that to tell it, you are a personal finance assistant. It is your job to take a look at the attached document and extract the most relevant information for our finance tracker. Please extract the purpose of the invoice, right? The product bought, product bought in brackets name, the amount, and the date of the purchase. Perfect. Very simple prompt. You can, of course, adapt it if you want to extract more information, but this gives us a great starting point. Now, again, the reason why Relay is so good with that is because it makes it really easy to get these more advanced AI workflows without knowing too much of how it actually works behind it. So all we need to do is now, under additional context, go in here and say, okay, please attach the file that we get in step 1 to it so that we have this prompt together with the file. We don't need to search Google or access any websites. But what we want to do is we want to define the output. And this again makes it much, much easier. For example, if you use this with make, then what you would need to do here now is to define exactly, okay, please output this in a JSON, output, these fields. So you would need to write it in the prompt. Here, what we can do is we can simply go in and say, okay, please give me first a text field. This will be the name. Then give me a number field. This will be the amount. And last but not least, please give me a date field. So under more types, we can take date. And this will be did we call it transaction date? Let's just call this date. Should work. But you want to make sure that if you have like more complex prompts and want to extract something specific, you should match or like at least explain here in your prompt what should be filled in here. All right, if the model returns an error, we will fail. And then all we need to do is we can click on test this step, select our file from the whimsical invoice. We have our whimsical invoice. Perfect, August, September. And then we can click on test to see that extracts the data the way we think it should. All right, and after a few seconds, we see the automation has been completed successfully. And we see, okay, date, 28th August, name, monthly plan, amount, 12. Perfect. Now, one thing that we see though is like monthly plan, right? We can't figure out from this like what monthly plan. So we should expand our prompt a little bit and say, so we want the product bought, name and company. So that it also adds, whimsical in there or like payee. So we know that. And then the amount, 12. So we don't need to test it again. So we can just click on done and continue with the next step. All right. We want to now create a new entry in Notion. So we click on plus and we will select Notion from our connections and say add a page to a database. Now, again, if you use Notion for the first time with Relay, you will have to go through the authorization process and connect it once. And during this connection step, it will ask you what pages or databases should it have access to. And in that case, ideally, you already give it access to that database with the cash flow items. But if you forgot that, or you have already used Relay and now need to connect this, then you need to go over to Notion and make sure that Relay can access that specific database. In order to do that, you can simply navigate to the parent page in which all your databases live, and then click on the 3 dots in the top right corner. And under connections, you want to make sure that Relay.app shows. If it doesn't show, go on connect to and search for Relay, and here you'll be able to connect it if you authorized Relay already for your Notion account. Alright, I can now go into my database and say, please give me my cash flow items. And under cash flow items, I can now choose which fields to populate. So I can say, please map the our name field here on our database. Please map this to on plus the AI output for the name. Then please map the date for again our AI output for the date. And last but not least, please map the amount, you already know the drill, to the AI output from the amount field. That's the very basic setup, where we just now push over the entries from the extracted PDF or image to Notion. And that would be a great starting point, but we probably also want to automate the part where it has to, select the corresponding month. So let's add that quickly in. In order to do this, we need to add 2 steps to our model. We need to first figure out what month a transaction happened in, and then we need to search that month as a database item in our, month database in Notion. Now, we could actually just expand our prompt and ask, ChatGPT or whatever AI model we use, please also output the month, and then map it to a field and then use that. But let's learn a little bit about Relay and how it works. So instead, what we're going to do is we're going to use a data transform option. So under utilities, we want to transform data. And we want to say, please take the AI output of the date and transform this. Now, what we want to do is we want to make sure that we format this as text. And we want to format it as the actual month. So we can scroll down until we see, okay, we want to format this month and this date as the January option. And we can click on done. Now, that's the first step. And then the second step is we want to search that month in Notion. So let's go in and let's say, okay, Notion, we want to use the find pages option. We want to search in our months database. And the filter by which we want to search, we want to make sure that the name of that month is exactly the transformed data text output. So and then we can also say, okay, what should happen if nothing is found? If nothing is found, please still continue or fail. Or in this case, let's say let's fail. And if more than one page is found, pick the first one. Now, as you might know, might figure, like this can of course start to fail once you have your next year and the next months with the same name. There are a few ways to troubleshoot this. The easiest is to simply, when you go to the next year, add like a filter here that you always do that for the current year. But let's keep it simple for now and just pretend we only have every month once in here. We have our general structure ready, so we can actually start a test run and just see that this actually works as intended. So let's click on Start Test Run. We can pick a file to test it with and click on Test Run. This will open this other module where we can have it run all steps. And now we can see, hopefully in real time, how it will extract the information using ChatGPT, then transform the data, and then hopefully find the month where the date is August, and actually throw an error. Okay, so now we can do some troubleshooting, and we can see why did this automation fail. Okay, error received from Notion, request to integration timed out. Okay, so this is actually a fairly common error that you might run into when you build an automation, so it's great that we have it here. That's because the Notion API rate limits how many requests you can do. And sometimes that just means, when you send too many requests at once, it will time out. Now here we actually only send 2 requests. So it's probably more because the Notion API is a bit under heavy load. So what we can do in this case, just to be on the safe side, is we can add a delay or sleep in here. So let's look for sleep. Or actually delay, is it that? No, always forget how it's called. Is it on a flow control? Yeah, wait for time it's called. Okay, let's say we want to wait for 1 minute before we run the next step. That would fix it, particularly if you have a lot of requests. Notion API is overloaded. Doesn't happen, then we just need to rerun the automation. But let's do it with this. Publish and upgrade the active run. Publish. And then let's go back and start another test run. All right. This is looking better. The run is complete. And if we head over to our Notion database, we see we have now the monthly plan, whimsical. We have $12 here, and we have the 28th of August, and it connected it to August. I did create August, of course, before I did that, so that it could find that month, right? If you wanted to create a month in case it doesn't find it, that would expand the complexity a little bit. But that's just one last thing that we need to change for sure. We need to make sure this is labeled as an outflow. So let's go back to the workflow. Let's update it and make sure that when we add a page to our cash flow items, we also, as one more field, set the type always to cash flow, right? That doesn't change across tabs. That's always the same. So this is now your base template to extract all the expenses that you have where you have an individual invoice for it. And you can, of course, easily adapt this to, on the other hand, extract your inflow if you have varying inflows. Same process, right? You would upload it to the different folder. You would duplicate this whole automation, and you just make sure that it looks at the file in the inflow order folder, and when it creates a new page item, it labels it as inflow other than outflow. But what about if you have, for example, a credit card statement and you need to extract, a lot of line items from it? Well, a bit more complicated, but it's also possible. In order to do this, let's actually take this workflow, duplicate it, and then modify it accordingly. So this one will be, our automated finance tracker, outflows or line items. And the typical use case is, right, you have a credit card statement and you have a lot of individual things, and you don't want to just have the sum, but what you actually spend things on. So in this case, what you need to do is you need to modify your prompt. And we need to ask it not to only, extract like a sum, but we need to ask it to create a JSON object and an array of all these individual elements, which might sound complicated, but don't worry. Again, this will make it super simple. So your job is to take a look at the attached, let's just call this a credit card statement, because this is what we assume we'll put in there. Credit card statement, and extract every single line item. For every line item, please provide the name, what was what, the amount, and the date of the transaction. Output the result in a JSON object. And then we need to redefine our output. So we're actually going to remove these elements here. And instead, what we wanted to do is under more types, we want it to give us a JSON array. And this array will be an array of JSON objects. A bit complicated, but again, don't worry. This will make sense in a moment. So let's call this our line items. save it. And then in here, we can now define the nested structure. So what are the elements for each individual item in that list? And that would be, again, right, the name. It would be the number. So it would be the amount. And it would be, last but not least, the date. All right, perfect. So this is the modification that we need to make on the AI prompt level. And this would then give us the desired output of having like all the individual items extracted. Now, very importantly, if you have a mixed situation, right, where you have some line items and some individual invoices, the easiest way to do this would to have just different folders for that, right? So, and then different automations, one that looks at the individual outflows, one on the other. Of course, you could make this automation more complex and first determine, okay, which one of the two is it? But it's much easier to do that, sorting step manually and just upload your credit card statements to one folder and your, individual invoices to another. Next, after we extract this list, we need to make sure that we iterate over that list. So we process every single line item separately. In order to do that, we need to click on plus here, and then we need to go under flow control, and there we have an iterator. And here you see that we can now select a list. So we can select our AI code and our line items from before. And one important limitation currently with Relay.app, you can only have 100 iterations per run. So if your credit card statement has more than 100 individual line items, you need to, again, add a bit more complexity to this. You might have to split the array into several arrays. There are a lot of workarounds to it, but let's focus on the base version here just to get this up and running. And now, as you can see, we have inside our iterator can now define different steps for it to go through. So we need to make sure that we transform the data, find the month, wait, and add the page to the cash flow items for every single item here. So all we need to do is we just drag it inside. So we say, please transform data, please find the page. I have this in a different order. And then last but not least, the add the page. Oops, that didn't work with the resorting. So let's try it this way. Can we grab it here? Perfect. Transform data, find page, add page. And of course, we have alerts on all of them because we need to remap the data. So instead of taking this date, we need to have the JSON date. For finding the page, we will still say, okay, please find exactly from the transform data the text element. That works. And then last but not least, under cash flow items, we need to make sure that it's not the general cash flow. Cash flow item is correct. But here we need to then go in and swap out always for the JSON data. So this would be the name, the date would be the date in the JSON data, and then the amount would be also the amount from that JSON data. Perfect. That's pretty much it. Oops, got saved time, date saved, and then everything should be correct. Let's see. We need to also authorize Notion. Sometimes it asks you to reauthorize a different tool because your permissions are set to account. So we just click on authorize both of them, and then perfect. Now we should be able to confirm everything, and then we can test this workflow as well. Or as last time, we click on start a test run. We can then again look for our files. So we have a sample credit card statement. We create a test run, and again we'll go through it to see whether ChatGPT can correctly extract data, and then iterate through all of our elements here. Right, and we see now the iterations are currently running, right? For every single iteration, it will go now through, fetch the data from Notion. We actually forgot to add the wait part, so should make sure to fix that. But it will grab every single element and hopefully add it correctly to our database. Perfect, so we have all our sample credit card expenses in here now. And of course, our months automatically calculators, right? Our total spend across them. And if we had categories on them, that we would, categorize accordingly. Also the breakdown here. Now, I did say fully automated, and there's still one manual step that we have to do in our current setup, and that's to apply a category to it. Now, it might, of course, be a good idea to, go through your items and apply these categories yourself, just to be sure, you're very specific with them and actually realize, okay, what you're spending your money on. But in case you also want to automate that with the help of AI, well, you can. So for this one, what we need to do is first start this trigger with Notion. I want to make sure that a new page is added. So we'll basically trigger this of anything being added to our database. And we'll pick, of course, our cash flow items database. We could add a filter to it, and we actually should, because we probably want to, ultimately look at the ones where the type is an outflow. And then it will in a second like pull all our example credit card statements in here. So perfect, we can click on done here. That's the trigger. And then the action that we want to take is again an AI action. And we want it to look at our expense, right, and tell us, okay, what was this expense about? So in this case, we'll ask it, please look at the look at the expense provided and identify the best category to categorize it within our finance bracket. Now, very simple prompt. You can, of course, expand that. A good idea would be to give it some guardrails and to make sure that it only selects from certain categories, because otherwise you risk that it keeps labeling things differently. So what I would recommend, the easiest solution is to just in here write your categories that you want to have labeled, right? So let's say we want to have like categories to choose from, and that could be travel, groceries, subscriptions, and other. If no specific category applies, please choose other. Now, of course, you can make this even more robust, right? You could have a database of your categories in Notion, pull that in dynamically to have it choose from it, and so on and so on. But this is a very good starting point. And of course, another tip for your prompt writing, if you do this for business, right, and you want to label it for that, adding more context around, your specific situation, of course, also helps it to be more precise here. The context that we want to pull in will be from the page, the name, and that should be pretty much actually it. And then we can just have it as an output, render some text, and this should be the category. Perfect. Now, with this category saved, we can then go to the next step and say, okay, please, now in Notion, update page. So please update the page that we had that we found in the first step, and please update the category field and set the category to our A output. So you get a warning here, right? It will tell you that, okay, if this is the wrong type, it might result in an error. But for this case, Notion will accept the text version, so that should be fine. And now let's just start a test run again to see whether it works properly. So we have here just our sample credit card expenses. Here, of course, it won't be able to, pick the specific category, but it should actually just tell it, say then that it is an other expense. So let's see whether it works. All right, this looks good. And if we move over here, we see, okay, sample credit card expense. It has now correctly been identified as other. Now all that's left is to build a finance dashboard in Notion. So in order to do that, we will first turn all our databases into pages. That's usually what I like to do. While building, I like to have them as inline options, so it's just easier to jump between them. But then when it's time to build a dashboard, best to have them in their separate pages and move them in a backend. So for cash flow items, I'll probably, we had the list item for the month, we have the calendar with a specific one, and then for the year, probably just take the big calendar. Perfect. Then we can create a toggle and call this backend and move our pages in there. Of course, if you have your own proper backend setup in your Notion workspace where all your central databases live, then you should move them there. Next, let's get a bit more space and turn on full width on the page. Perfect. Now it's time to think about, okay, what are the most important things that we need to see when we open this page? So what I would like to see is I would like to see my last 10 expenses and then the current state of the month. So to do that, I will type /call. And actually, let's do prefix up here. So let's do here our quick H2 for last expenses. Here H2 for current finance status, and then like another one for, let's call this analytics or something like that. And of course, if you have a smaller screen, right, you might want to stick with 2 columns, but I have quite a bit of screen real estate to work with here, so I like this 3-column layout for it. Let's add a divider below them, just for some nice visual parts on there. And then let's add our lists. So actually here on the last expenses, let's do create link view database, and we want to add our cash flow items. Let's take this as a table view, that's perfect. And then what I want to do is I want to first add a load limit. So I only see 10 pages. Then I want to add a sort, and I want to sort this by the date, and I want to sort it by date descending. So this makes sure now that I only see the newest 10 items. I can then hide my database title just for a cleaner view, and to make it even cleaner, I can go in here and just add a space as the view name, and then the icon for it. And this creates this really, really nice minimal layout here. Now, in order to see actually just the relevant amount info, I will resize these columns a little bit. The date is great, that's super useful, and then I will hide all the properties I don't need. So I go into properties, and I want to hide the, let's hide the type and the month. The category I want to see because I might want to be able to assign it. So I'll actually make this a bit smaller, and then that way we have more space to actually, apply the categories here, and all still fits on this screen. Perfect. That looks pretty good. So now let's go to the current financial status. So here again, we will say create link view of database. And this time we want to pick our months. Now for months, let's choose a different way to display this. We could of course use this, right, with a table, but in particular if we only want to show 1 month, it's a bit of overkill and it's hard to fit all the information here. So instead what we're going to do is we will create some helper properties. And these helper properties will just help us to make sense of the data that we're displaying. You'll see in a moment why. So let's call this display total spent. And all I wanted to say is total spent. And then I would also like this to be bold. So I will add style. And then in that style bracket, I will just add B to it, which will make the whole thing bold. And you see, in a table view like this, not very useful, but it will make sense in a second. So we have this, and then I want to see maybe also my total income. Sure. So let's take our duplicated property here and just let's call this total income. And actually, in order to make this a bit more colorful, let's have our income in green and our spend in red. Perfect. Now, what we can do is we can go in here and say, okay, layout, please show this to me as a gallery. And I don't want to show the database title. I don't want to show a page view. I just want to have the individual card. And you might already see where I'm going at here. I will change again this to the minimal look. And now what I'm going to do is I'm going to turn on as the properties the total spend, and this one we actually need to rename to total income. And then we turn both of these on, and then we turn our actual income and spend on, and drag these numbers below. And now you see why I have these divider properties, because otherwise we just see that number here and it's very hard to make sense of the number to see, well, is this income or not? All right, but like this, it's much better. And then all we need to do is make sure we only show a current month. So for that, we have a few options where we can do it dynamically. Let's for this one just actually use a very simple filter. We want to have the, say just, okay, please just show me as the month currently, what is it? It's September. That's all I want to see. But of course, if you set up a smart filter, you would just set the date that the month lasts for, and then have it filter for the current month. But again, this does the trick here. Oops, let's put this back. All right, this is taking up shape nicely. All that's missing is now some analytics. For analytics, let's go ahead and create another linked database view. And now I want to have my expenses. So we'll take my cash flow items again. Create a new view, and this time let's add a chart. So we don't want to show a title here, and then let's say edit chart. And what I want to show is I want to show first a breakdown of like the categories that I spend on. So I will show the category, that's perfect. But then what to show, I don't want to show the count, I want to show the sum of the individual aspects. And we can see, okay, most of the categories we currently have not categorized, but that's also because we currently show both expenses, also inflow and outflow. So what we need to do is add a filter to this, say, okay, only show me things where the type is outflow. And then of course, we could also filter for the current month. So we say, okay, and the month is September. Again, if we do like this, we need to update it then on the individual months to update for the current month. But if you have a date behind the month, you can also just say, okay, wherever this is the current one. Perfect. So now I see at a glance, okay, this is how I spend across the different categories. And then let's call this by category. And then let's create actually a second chart. And for this one, we just want to see maybe our month-over-month expenses. So let's duplicate this view. Call this month over month. And here what we want to show is we want to show the month. We want to make sure that we don't show any months that don't have anything. And then within the month, I want to show the sum of what we spend in each month. Now, this again is still filtered for September, right? So we need to actually go in here and remove that filter. Remove it. Perfect. So now we have our different months. They are in the wrong order. So we need to go sort and make sure we don't sort A to Z, but manually. So we want to have July, August, September. Perfect. And then if we wanted to, we could then further say, okay, please break it down by categories. So under group, we pick category. And then we now have the individual categories broken down. We see, okay, no categories because in July and August we didn't assign categories. But for September, we see, okay, groceries, travels. This is how it stacks up. All right, perfect. This is looking already pretty good for a simple financial dashboard that shows you pretty much everything you need at a glance. But since I promised you this would be fully automated, let's now also build this thing where, the months update automatically. So in order to do that, let's go first to our months and make sure that they have actually a date property. So we will add a date and we will call this duration. And then for every month, we will set actually when this month is. So let's do it for now, just for September, but you would of course do it for every single one. And you, in order to automate it fully, can automate also the month creation. But for now, let's just do this manually here for this one. Then we can go back to our finance tracker and can go to cash flow items. And on cash flow items, we can now pull in the actual duration via a roller. So we can say, okay, please show me the month duration. And since this is a helper property that we actually don't really need for this, right? It just powers some other features. I often like to add helper in front of it and give them this generic gear sign, just as a visual way to separate them from other properties that actually do something. If you work in a team environment, great idea also to add a property description to make sure your team isn't confused by what the purpose of this property is. And we want to pull in from the month the duration. Perfect. So now we automatically have the corresponding duration here, which means, oops, that was duplicated. We don't want that. We want to hide this actually here. Hide in view. But now what we can do is we can go back here to our filters and adjust them to be automated. So what we will do is say, okay, here for the filter, instead of it saying, name September, let's delete that and say instead, okay, I want it where the duration start date is relative to this month, which shows me September. And then next month will automatically show me October. And then the same here, right? Same idea. Not on month or month, but on the by category one. We'll go also in the filter. Here it is. Filter, two rules, where the, not month, but helper month duration, any relative to the day is this month. And you see exactly the same result as before, but now as the months roll over, this will automatically update. And there you have it. A fully automated finance tracker in Notion, which happens to be a great use case for one of Notion's most recent feature releases, Notion Charts. But there are also a lot of additional amazing use cases for this feature. So if you want to make the most out of Notion Charts and learn everything there is about visualizing stuff in your Notion workspace, well, then just click here and I'll see you in a few seconds.